I heard tell we had an election last night. My voice is about gone, so I apologize for sounding like a Muppet, but with the talking heading and the kids were sick all last week, so of course I've come down with a head cold during the busiest week of the year for political commentary. So just bear with me, but a little bit of reaction now as we've come to the morning. Donald Trump has won the presidential election. We don't know about the House of Representatives yet. The Republican Party is going to have a 2 or 3 seat majority in the Senate, maybe more. We still have to wait on Michigan and a couple other things. Nevada's still out there. But we know the basic parameters of what we're dealing with. Donald Trump has won a second term, split off from his first term. Welcome to Grover Cleveland Club, my friend. So here's where we're at. What happened here? The thing about sports is the scoreboard doesn't lie. Now, there's reasons for the score. Your quarterback gets hurt, your big hitter doesn't hit, your pitcher has a bad outing, whatever sports analogy you want. There's reasons for the score. The coach made a mistake, whatever. There's excuses for the score. The refs were terrible because they always are if you lose, and they were great if you win. The weather was bad. Our team had to travel on a short week. Our team was tired, whatever. There's excuses for the score, but the scoreboard doesn't lie. The scoreboard basically tells you something that's indicative of what happened during the game. And honestly, if you really want to do honest analysis, whether it's sports or politics, the scoreboard also tells you what happened before the game that got you there. Remember, one of the core values of our program is things don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in a sequence. So what was the sequence of events here? Well, we had a pretty static race where Joe Biden was an unpopular incumbent president. He then had a meltdown. He cognitively clearly wasn't fit for the office, although he stayed in the office, but he did step aside. And Vice President Kamala Harris took over for him. That reconsolidated the Democratic base, but it didn't really bring in anybody new. And if you look at the polling number, the polling data, once Kamala Harris's initial bump died down a little bit, it was pretty static from what Joe Biden was doing before the Joe Biden meltdown at the debate. So what are we dealing with here? There was one screenshot during the CNN coverage that told the entire story of this. Now, when I studied theology, there's a very important thing about studying theology. It's like Scripture has many applications, but only one interpretation. So figure out the interpretation. This election has many, many applications, but there's only one interpretation. And the interpretation is something that I've been tweeting about and talking about. And although I stayed out of the prediction business on this one, but I was like, I can see a path where Harris wins. But Donald Trump had the easier electoral college path, and Kamala Harris had some challenges, but Kamala Harris could win. She did not win. Donald Trump won handily. And the interpretation of this race, how he won, is very simple. And CNN had a chart, and I put it on my social media. We'll link to it on herdtell.substack.com. If you've not subscribed, please do so. If you've not contributed to help us keep that going, we would greatly appreciate it. Just hit those buttons. There was not, as of the time we're recording this, there is not a single Biden 2020 county that Kamala Harris improved upon. Across the board, she ran roughly about 3% behind where Joe Biden did in 2020 when he beat Donald Trump. And the way he beat Donald Trump and the way he flipped states was in rural districts where Trump would still win 60, 40, 70, 30, whatever. But Biden could eat into those margins just a little bit, 5 points here, 7 points here, 3 points there. And eventually you would offset that with the urban gains that Democrats usually get. And you could win places like a Georgia, where Atlanta battles with the rural districts. That's how you win. Kamala Harris couldn't do that. She trailed behind. So early in the night, when places like Loudoun County outside of D.C., this is a county that had been in a lot of the regional news. I know, like when I do Fox 5 hits for Fox 5 DC, an excellent station, the school board stuff was big there. The school choice stuff was big there. They'd had scandals in the schools. She was trailing Biden in that district, even though it's a Democratic district. She trailed Biden in the areas around Philadelphia. And it wasn't big. It was, she was running 65% to his 69% and things like this. But there's just no version of this election where Kamala Harris did not underperform. And you can go look at my Twitter feed, and a lot of other people pointed it out. She underperformed throughout this race. Now, that's the facts on the ground. That's the game. That's what the scoreboard says. There's excuses for that. You know, the campaign, the truncated, her getting swapped out, whatever. There's reasons for that. She was a candidate that had never before just yesterday in the early voting period had never had anybody ever vote for her to be president ever because she bowed out before the first primary in 2020. So there's reasons and excuses, but the scoreboard tells the truth. Kamala Harris underperformed. She is probably the weakest of the three candidates Donald Trump has faced. There's some circumstances you can get into, but that's just the facts of the matter. So what does that all mean? Well, we don't know yet. We got to wait and see what happens with the House. If the Republicans get all three branches of government, obviously they're going to try to ramrod some stuff really fast because, again, we've seen this movie before. Everybody take a deep breath. Even if you get the trifecta, Obama got it, Trump got it his first term, Bush got it, you usually only get one piece of legislation through. Now, there's a couple caveats to that I want to point out to everybody. One is we don't know how the House races are going to go, and it'll probably be a couple of days, if not a week, before we know the makeup of the House of Representatives. Speaker Johnson's probably going to stay on now. This has been the least effective majority of Congress in recent memory. They've not been good. They haven't been able to do a lot. Now, of course, the Democrats had the Senate. Now the Republicans have the Senate. But they're just not very good at this stuff. And now Trump's going to have a heavy hand in what he wants to do. So don't just assume they're going to be able to ramrod stuff. It's going to be messy. We know a Trump administration is going to have scandals and lawsuits and judicial stuff. We know that's going to happen. Now, all the legal stuff involving Trump's probably going to go away, at least for the near term, because he's going to be the sitting president. So that immunity ruling is going to really come into play now. But consider this also, Donald Trump is also automatically a lame duck president. He's also the oldest president. He beat Biden's record, who had beat Trump's record, because we keep, electing geriatrics. He's now the oldest president. So all those things, all the crazy stuff he does, that can start getting attributed to age. Some of the stuff that kind of plagued Biden is going to plague him. Also, keep this one thing in perspective. And if you voted for Trump or you voted against Trump, or you're really upset that Trump won, or you're really happy Trump won, here's something really important I want you to kind of fixate and just bookmark and keep center in the coverage for the next couple of years, because this is important and you need to hear what I'm saying here. Trump beat Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton was deeply unpopular. Biden beat Trump because Trump was deeply unpopular as president. Trump beat Kamala Harris because she couldn't get inroads and turned out to be unpopular. Trump is not going to be a popular president, even though he won with a better margin than he lost in 2020 and he won in 2016. He's still not going to be popular. In fact, he's a lame duck on top of it, so he's going to start out being unpopular. Donald Trump is going to do better politically in opposition to somebody unpopular than he's going to be as the president popular with a raucous caucus in the House that's, even if they have the majority, have not shown an ability to really get anything done. And he's a lame duck. And he's going to have the super ambitious J.D. Vance to look over his shoulder at, because J.D. Vance now thinks he's going to be president, and the Democratic Party is going to have to regroup. Those are the dynamics going forward. So just keep all that in mind, that even though he's won, there's still a lot of ball game left to go here. Now let's talk about our Democratic friends for just a second. What do? There's something very fundamentally wrong with how the Democratic Party is going about national elections, and they need to fix it very quickly. If they're going to be competitive, and it's not just their candidates, it's just kind of an overall, we talked about this being a vibe election. They have a core misunderstanding of part of the electorate. The two most important demographics in the electorate now are white working class and Hispanics. And the thing about the white working class vote is, because those are the voters that go Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump, there's going to be a good number of those when we get the data. Why is that? Why do they keep going back and forth? And the Hispanic vote, we already know from the census the Hispanic community is the fastest growing demographic in America. It's also becoming a very diverse demographic. Trump made great inroads. Republicans have been making inroads. There's counties in Texas that are predominantly Hispanic that are heavily Republican now. Why is that? Because the Hispanic demographic has grown so much that we're starting to see divisions inside that demographic that we see inside other demographics like white or Asian or black or whatever else. They're dividing over education, and they're having divisions over their economic and social classes. So working class Hispanics are going heavily towards Trump, more educated, more elite, more plugged in, more people that go to higher universities and maybe get a little bit more of that sort of ideology in them. They're still going Democratic, but it's splitting. So you can't say that the demographics of Hispanics, the old demographic is destiny thing. Anybody that's still pitching that is just purposely ignorant or dumb or just isn't paying a lick of attention. The Hispanic vote is getting more and more diverse, and it's growing overall. And if you don't make an effort electorally to deal with folks where they are, regardless of their demographic, and deal with their economic station and their education level, that's how you get those voters, whether they're Hispanic voters, black voters, white voters, Asian voters, purple people eater voters, whatever. You can't just look at a demographic and accept that you're going to get 80, 90% of that vote anymore. It's not going to happen anymore. That's not the world we live in now. If you are a political party, especially the Democratic Party, if you can't talk to working class voters that do not have college educations, you're going to keep losing national elections. If you're the Republican Party, you need to start figuring out how to, because even though you're having success with Trump, Trump is a singularity that is now going to be off the board. You're going to have to figure out how to start getting some college educated voters to keep any kind of a national majority. These are two dynamics that we need to pay a lot of attention to going forward, because both parties, frankly, kind of suck at it. They're not good at it. It's easy to rail against the elites, but there's a lot of elites that you need to get to vote for you. It's easy to vote against, to rail and holler and scream about those rubes out in the sticks if you're a Democrat, but you need them to win national elections. At least you need 30 or 40% of them at a minimum. And you're not getting those right now. And that's why you lost. And that's why Trump is clipping off places like the so-called blue wall, those old blue dog Democrats. That's why we saw my home state now does not have a single Democrat in statewide office, with Joe Manchin passing off the scene. I know he went independent, but he's really a Democrat at heart. Let's be honest. In my lifetime, 25 years, West Virginia went from deep blue to deep red. Those are all blue dog Democrats. The Democratic Party kind of left them behind on some cultural and social issues, and they just don't like how the National Party talks to them in a lot of ways. So the Democratic Party needs to learn how to talk to those rural people. And even if they voted for Trump, you're going to have to figure out a way to talk to them that doesn't involve name calling, because here's the problem. You've called Trump everything under the book, even if it's valid. Calling him things like, fascist and Nazi and all this. You've thrown the worst words you can at this man for 9 years, and he just walked right through it, right back into the White House. So that strategy isn't working, even if some of that's true, and I think some of it has validity. I think he's amoral. I think he's unfit for office, but he's going to be our president for the next however many years he's in office. He's elected to 4. We'll see how it goes. He's going to be our president. So just name calling Trump and name calling his supporters isn't going to get it done. You're not convincing anybody. That's just the truth. You need to go work on it. Now, Republicans, let's talk about that for a second. The Never Trump movement has failed. That's dead and gone. Trump is now going to be the dominant force of this party long after he leaves, because he's the last 2 wins that you have on the board. That's just how this goes. Again, I would be a little cautious in your optimism, because there's going to be this thing to overblow this win, and it's a big win, but it's also a win against some very specific circumstances, with Kamala Harris and the way that campaign, and Joe Biden completely falling apart. Kamala Harris had 2 very unanswerable questions that she never answered correctly, and that cost her this election. She never answered how the cognitive decline of Joe Biden was excused. And, again, there's going to be some blame blowback on Biden here, because had he resigned the office and said, look, I just can't go anymore, and made her president, maybe that would have helped a little bit. I don't know if that would have helped her win, but it would have helped probably. She never could answer, because you can't just say, yeah, Joe Biden lost it and I had to cover for him, because that's the job, even though that's the truth. She didn't have a good answer for Joe Biden's cognitive decline. That answer about, well, I wouldn't do a thing different. She has to answer it that way politically, but it also kills her politically. So that was a bad spot. Number two is she never really answered their question of why she should be president other than I'm not Donald Trump. Not Donald Trump, as we've seen, gets you about 46, 47%. You need another 2 or 3% to win. And she didn't do it. She didn't have an answer for it. She tried the joy thing. They tried the not going back thing. They tried a couple different things. They brought out the heavy hitters. Barack Obama came out and campaigned more than he ever has in his lifetime for down ballots, and it didn't work. So the Democratic Party is going to have some soul searching to do. The progressive movement, and I'm talking to our progressive friends now, I'm just going to pay you the compliment of being blunt. The very online progressive movement experiment for the Democratic Party is a failure. It's just not going to work. I understand it's popular. I understand it fundraises, but you're not going to win a national election with that. So there's going to be this screaming from the very progressive elements of the Democratic Party of, well, of course we lost. She tried to run as a moderate. Well, she didn't really. She was the most progressive candidate that's ever been on a Democratic ballot in our lifetime. You have to be able, if you're a Democrat and you're a progressive, I'm just telling you the truth. I'm sorry, this is just the truth. If you can't convince moderate people to give you a shot, you're not going to win. And if you just get on your ramparts of progressivism that's very, very online, demonizing everybody else, you're not going to be able to win. So there's a path to do so. You run moderately and govern progressively. That happens in governor's races. That happens in House races, Senate races. You can do that. It would probably work in a presidential election if you have a charismatic enough candidate to do it. Barack Obama moved the ball to the left. Joe Biden in 2020 moved the ball to the left. But they ran pretty moderately, governed decently moderately, and then got one or two key wins for progressives. The very online progressives doesn't think that's enough because they want the revolution now, but the revolution isn't going to win on a national ballot. So you can either keep revolutioning in the corner by yourself and losing, or you can figure out a way to moderate your message, get in office, and then try to get what you want. That's the truth. Sorry. So we'll see what the Democratic Party does. If they double down on progressivism, they'll probably lose again in 2028. We'll see what the 2026 midterms look like, because again, we don't know what the House looks like right now. That's going to be a key piece right now. Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker or Mike Johnson as Speaker is going to be very important to how the next couple of years play out. Now we're going to have J.D. Vance waiting in the wings. You would think he's probably going to be the favorite to be the nominee in 2028. That also means you're going to have another Ohio Senate race here pretty soon. That'll be fun. And by fun, I mean like root canal fun. Couple other things real quick. Texas and North Carolina, neither one of them flipped blue. Democrat, let's start in North Carolina because I actually know a lot about it because I've spent, a good part of my adult life in North Carolina and still own a home there. Democrats had a good night in North Carolina. Mark Robinson is one of the worst candidates in modern American history for a lot of reasons. We knew that ahead of time. Him winning lieutenant governor was a bit of a fluke. He's a bad human being, and he lost badly. He lost so badly that the Democratic Party not only won, all due respect to Josh Stein, who's a fine person. He's not a super exciting candidate. He's next man up. But hey, that worked for Roy Cooper for 8 years, so we'll see what happens. They also won the AG. Dan Bishop lost, which will surprise some Republican folks. And it looks like the assembly in North Carolina is not going to be veto-proof. So Democrats actually had a decent night in North Carolina, even though Trump won it. Texas did not flip blue, although we keep getting sold that over and over again. Ted Cruz, it will stay in the Senate despite his burgeoning podcasting career. He'll be in the Senate for a little longer. Watch these people that continually sell you on states flipping one way or the other. The demographics of a place like North Carolina are changing, but they're changing slowly. What happened in West Virginia is an outlier. There's a reason that's only happened a few times in American history, going from deep blue to deep red like that. And it took Trump, and there was a lot of other things to go with it. And there's demographic, that's the only demographic negative state in the union on the last census. I'm losing my ability to talk, so we'll wrap this up. But there was a lot that goes into those things happening. Texas is very dynamic. North Carolina is very dynamic. These are two of the most dynamic economies of any states we have, and the demographics are very fluid because of those dynamic, Apple and Amazon and places like this are putting, a lot of money into places like North Carolina and Texas. Tesla just moved to Texas. I know I don't want to get into the Elon stuff, but he moved to Texas for a reason. It's friendly. These are very dynamic, fluctuating electorates that you're just going to have to pay attention to. You're not going to see big swings back and forth. You're going to see a lot of purple going shades of blue and shades of red, depending on the quality of the candidate. And that's just the truth. A couple other states I want to point out right now. Florida is no longer a swing state. It's solid red. Ohio is no longer a swing state. It's solid red. Georgia goes back red for the presidential, but Georgia now goes back to the forefront because you're going to have a very interesting Senate race there. So keep an eye on Georgia going forward. Nevada is still not settled, but it looks like Trump won Nevada. That's a state to look at. Just when we get all this data done, and it's going to take a couple days, probably a week or two, and then we can go back and go through all this data. It's going to be worth looking at what is a swing state and what is not a swing state. Things like the blue wall wasn't really a wall. We need to revisit that. The Sun Belt being solidly Republican is something we really need to look at. Depending on how Arizona breaks. Kari Lake has lost. Arizona itself hasn't been decided as we're recording this. It's very close. Looks like Trump will eke it out, but we will see. Kari Lake lost because she's a bad candidate. She's just a bad candidate. Sorry, she is. But the Sun Belt, the southern states, being solidly red is something to really pay attention to. That's way more important than the blue wall, because the blue wall, again, if you can't get working class voters, you're going to have these problems. So those are just some thoughts as we go forward. Donald Trump, here I'll just do the same thing I did last presidential election. I can't stand this. Well, so-and-so is not my president. Yes, they are. That's the way it works. Joe Biden is my president right now. Donald Trump will be my president come January. Barack Obama was my president. Bill Clinton was my president. George H.W. Bush was my president. George W. Bush was my president. Jimmy Carter was my president technically when I was a baby, but obviously I don't remember that. They're your president. Your job, whether you voted for them or not voted for them, is to help them do good things and yell at them when they do bad things. And that's what we're going to continue to do on our program, regardless of whether it's the president or a member of the House of Representatives or a member of the U.S. Senate or a governor or all the way down to dog catcher. That's your job as a citizen. If they do good stuff, help them do it. Praise them for doing it. If they do bad stuff, yell at them, fight against them. That's your job as an American, to raise hell if our elected officials do not behave themselves. And we know Trump's not going to behave himself, but maybe you can get some good stuff out of it. We will see. Courage now. Encourage people that are having a bad day. Have some humility. Have some empathy for people whose candidates did or didn't win. Despair online is not a good look, because remember, if you have a Facebook account or a Twitter account or Instagram account, you are a news outlet. Don't be spreading despair, even if you're down. It's okay to say I'm down, but then, you're going to grieve forever. You're going to get back to work. Time to get to work. If you won magnanimously, and just understand that there's no such thing as permanent victory, because remember, Trump folks, you lost the last election, and you're not going to have Trump the next one. So, just stay steady, have a little empathy, have a little grace. We'll all get through this together. We are still, regardless of how any election goes, the greatest experiment in the history of the world in a free people governing. We're not doing a great job of it, but it's still the best we got. So let's all do the best we can with it.
All the music on Heard Tell is provided under a Creative Content license from monstercat.com.
Somos la máquina.